Hey guys, welcome back to the channel, and this week I want to talk about Arkham Batman, to be honest. He's one of two of my favorite Batman of all time, and he's more relevant now than he's been in a minute, so this is the perfect time to try to capitalize on that. And I understand why people are talking about him, to be honest. It's been 10 years since his last game, and he's finally coming back. And I don't know about you guys, but I, for one, am naturally excited to see how Rocksteady will handle Arkham Batman's natural characterization and progress his story in a way that's organic and true to the themes of the Arkham series. Alright, so let's get into it. Oh. You know, if I had a penny for every time a beloved video game character was unceremoniously killed in a very disrespectful way, I'd have 2 pennies. Overall, it's not that much pennies, but it's weird that happened twice, right? His death and conclusion aside, people are still talking about him. So I thought I would at least lighten the mood by talking about his most popular matchup. I'm of course talking about him versus Insomniac Spider-Man. And yeah, I understand the comparison. Marvel versus DC. Both of these are pioneers of the superhero gaming genre. And to anyone who's played both titles, you can definitely see the former's influence on the latter. A lot of people like to say this matchup is a huge, massive stomp, and at first glance, it's understandable. But I'm here today to provide a different side of the argument. I want to enlighten you guys on some metas that I don't hear being spread on YouTube, and I'll even be including some recent arguments and metas from each character's newest installment. And I'm gonna level with you guys for a second. Someone's gotta put some respect on Arkham Batman's name. Rocksteady is it. But first, if you like the power scaling matchups, be sure to like, share, and subscribe. We post weekly videos where we cover a wide variety of topics. From Godzilla to Finest of Freddy's, this is the channel you want to be at. Be sure to follow all my socials, and with all that nonsense out the way, let's get into this matchup. Alright, so let's start off with Arkham Batman, my go. Literally, and I'm being so serious. I played all of his games ever since I was a kid. Well, almost all his games. We'll get to that later. But anyways, let's get into his main metas. Typically, a lot of people like to downplay this iteration of Batman to like wall or small building level. And I mean, yeah, he does have those metas, but it's far from his best stuff. But let me entertain this mindset for a little bit. Villains such as Bane and Killer Croc have small building level feats and calculations, and Batman can swap hands with them and even endure blows from these characters. But this isn't nearly the peak of power when it comes to his scaling, like some people say that it is. And for that, we're gonna have to talk about some supplementary material. I'm specifically talking about the animated film and some spin-off comics. But first, I'll talk about the less dubious feats from the Arkham games. In the Arkham City DLC, Batman's able to endure an explosion that encompassed the bottom half of an entire building. When taking into account Batman's vicinity to the explosion, it's been determined that he can endure forces equivalent to around 0.422 tons of TNT, which in simple terms is building level. But let's get to the juicy stuff now. In the climax to the animated canon Arkhamverse film Assault on Arkham, the Joker's able to survive the fall and subsequent explosion of a helicopter while being inside of it. This is a prequel to the games, and he's literally laughing the entire time, so the only explanation is that he was in it. It's a pretty violent explosion too, because when calculated, the explosive yield will come out to around 306.4 tons of TNT, which is around multi-city block level. And this is the Joker we're talking about. I feel like I don't gotta explain why Batman should scale to the Joker, but let me talk about something that actually needs to be addressed. And it's the canonicity of this film, and it's a tad dubious due to us having 2 Suicide Squads at the moment. And to that, I'm just gonna say that this film is canon until proven otherwise. And I mean, to be honest, this film is explicitly more connected to the games than this dumpster fire is. For starters, its events are referenced in the Arkham spin-off comics, and the film also goes out of its way to explain certain aspects of the games, whereas this new game just kind of retcons whatever it wants, with the most lazy explanations in a desperate attempt to shove itself into a series that actually has fans, because the Suicide Squad, as we both know, is frankly irrelevant. Oh, sorry, it appears that I went on a little rant there. You guys are not here for my opinions, I apologize. But anyways, if you want to point out design differences in the Arkham games and in this film, keep in mind this is Amanda Waller in Killer Justice League, and this is her in Arkham Origins. So trying to attack it on that premise is kind of a moot point, you know, it's kind of like, whatever. As a Godzilla fan, I'm pretty accustomed to this. And if you want to point out that in the animated film Killer Shark dies, you gotta remember, this is the same game that's trying to sell us on the idea that the Deadshot that we saw for the previous 2 games that take place over 8 years apart was a fake Deadshot. And only now are we seeing the true Deadshot. So lore isn't exactly something that these guys care about. This game is so bad, man. I literally have no idea what I'm talking about. Oh, yeah, alright. City block level Joker, of course. I want to point out that this level of power doesn't even reflect prime Arkham Knight Batman, because in that game he gets a suit that makes him stronger as well as faster. And luckily for us, we actually have a pretty easy way to gauge how much stronger the suit made him. And we have to just take into account his performance against Deadshot in this game. Deathstroke, I mean, my bad. This game just lives rent-free in my mind, doesn't it? But anyways, Deathstroke in Arkham Origins was portrayed to be on par with Batman. And during the events of Arkham Asylum City, he stated to be more than a match for Batman. This is consistent with Deathstroke's feats. As in a tie-in comic, he was able to fight Nightwing and Robin at the same time, with the former being stated to be pretty much Batman's equal. So we pretty much have Deathstroke here fighting on par with a Batman level character with help and still holding his own. Remember this, because when Batman gets the new armor, this is how he does Deathstroke. Yeah, he literally blitzed and two-shotted him. And that's me being generous, bruh, as I'm including that spear that he did to him as a part of the attacks. Using this instance, we can argue that Batman got anywhere from 3.5 to 5 times stronger, because we know a one-shot's gap in fiction is around 7.5 to 10 times stronger. So you just divide that by 2 since he two-shotted him. So Batman with the Arkham Knight suit is literally 5 times stronger than someone who was arguably even above him before it. But for a generous lowball in terms of attack potency, we're just gonna have to stack the multipliers on top of this feat right here. So for a baseline of how strong Arkham Batman would be before the Arkham Knight suit, we should just take this Joker feat and times it by 10, because Batman was able to one-shot characters such as Deadshot, who should logically be stronger than the Joker. Using this, Batman before his Arkham Knight suit would be in the kilotons in terms of power. And then we take this value and we multiply it by 5. And we can assert that Arkham Batman should be capable of outputting an enduring force equivalent to around 15 kilotons of TNT, which would put him at around small town level. But moving on to his speed now, as previously mentioned, Arkham Knight happens to be the peak of his speed, as it allows him to do multi-fear takedowns. And during these takedowns, his perception speed is shown to be so fast that automatic gunfire is pretty much moving in slow motion. And thanks to this calculation I found in the Versus Wiki, we can say Arkham Batman bare minimum has hypersonic perception, but higher ends do exist, as he should be on par if not faster than Catwoman, who can dodge electrical based attacks. This is consistent as Batman, even in the prequel comics, was shown to be able to dodge and react to electrical based attacks. At the very least, I would put Batman's speed at around massively hypersonic, but that's assuming that this electricity is moving at lightning speed. But since it's stated to be electricity, we can assert that these attacks are actually moving at around 9% the speed of light. And if characters like Catwoman could react to it, then I'd even say that pre-Arkham Knight Batman would be faster than Catwoman. So a current base Batman with the Arkham Knight suit should be anywhere from at least relativistic plus to more than likely base time FTL. That means faster than the speed of light for some of you guys who are not here regularly. So in conclusion, taking into account feats from the original games, Batman pre-Killer Justice League is very underrated, with him being multi-city block to even small town level, and his speed ranging from massively hypersonic to even faster than the speed of light. But what am I kidding? You guys want to hear the new metas from Killer Justice League, and don't worry, though I haven't played it, I've had discussions with people who have, and I've even watched the game movie cutscenes for this video. Yeah, I watched 3.5 hours of content for you guys that I didn't even like, so don't say I never did anything for you. I'm back, and here are some key takeaways from this game in terms of Batman's scaling. He didn't really get that much of an attack potency upgrade, but he got a slight upgrade nonetheless, as he's shown capable of one-shotting all the members of the Suicide Squad, including Deadshot, who's consistently stated to be the world's deadliest assassin, and he even one-shot Killer Shark, who's the muscle of the group, meaning that he's the strongest. And Amanda Waller even says that he's capable of taking on Superman. Now, I find this exact quote pretty questionable, but it should upscale him off of Deathstroke at the very least, as Amanda Waller had her eye on Deathstroke since the end of Arkham Origins. And due to leaks, he might actually be on the team, so yeah, Killer Shark would likely be stronger than Deathstroke. So right now, you could argue that current Batman should be able to one-shot Deathstroke. So using our previously established multiplier equation, Batman would get a slight bump from scaling to 15 kilotons to scaling all the way up to 30 kilotons of TNT. Still small town level, but not that bad. Well, I also want to attack the statement of Killer Shark scaling to Superman. As much as I would love this to be the case, because Batman could one-shot Killer Shark, it's just not consistent. For starters, Batman one-shots him, and that's already a red flag right there, but we can go even further, as Wonder Woman on multiple occasions is shown to be blatantly stronger than him. Killer Shark was also stuck in Green Lantern's constructs. This might not sound bad, but if you remember earlier in the game in the Hall of Justice, Green Lantern literally says that Superman is stronger than him and his ring. It makes Killer Shark scaling to Superman pretty questionable, as he's stuck in constructs that Superman blatantly upscales. So unfortunately, Batman one-shotting Killer Shark doesn't scale him to the potential earth-carrying strength of Superman. But now for an actual meaningful bump, and I gotta talk about Batman's speed upgrade, as he's now just blatantly faster than all the Suicide Squad due to them blitzing and one-shotting them. This is important because the squad can react to Superman and fight on par with him and perceive him. Superman during this point in the game is weakened, but despite being in this state, he will periodically unironically fly to the sun and back in an attempt to dampen the effects of the kryptonite. Now, if we use on-screen timing, this process would take a couple seconds, but if we stick to Superman's word, he literally says that it takes him about a second to do this. Now, granted, the feat is kind of weird because one could also argue he just flies outside of the exosphere, but he's stated to be greatly weakened by the the kryptonite, so I don't think 1 second of the exosphere will be really enough to help him. And I think overall in the context of the game, the implication is that he's literally sun dipping mid-fight. Flying to the sun and back in the nature that Superman did it would easily be an FTL plus feat, and members slower than Batman could react and perceive this Superman. So Arkham Batman's speed is solidified at faster than light plus. And I guess while I'm here, I'll talk about his durability, because a lot of people are trying to downplay Batman dying to a bullet. For starters, all of the squad's guns are amped by Poison Ivy, and he was literally able to survive a barrage of them. But even outside this game, Arkham Batman is consistently bulletproof, with only specific regions of the suit being weak to gunfire. This is so casual knowledge that even one of my Instagram friends, Strike_loves_Cal_Kestis, truly an incredible name for an incredible account. But he was able to dig up a panel from the Arkham Comics prequel run, where even pre-Arkham Knight Batman was able to survive a barrage of bullets. So I don't want to hear none of that he's 3+ level durability nonsense. Spider-Man, like Batman, would very easily get into the building level in terms of sheer attack potency, as he upscales Martin Lee's minions who can output that level of power. Spider-Man can also fight on par with Electro, who can destroy an entire smokestack, which when calculated comes out to around large building level. But for higher ends like we found in this first game, he can endure attacks from the Rhino who can do this. And also, apparently during Spider-Man's first encounter with Rhino, he would go on to destroy 6 city blocks during the conflict. At a low end, to no one's surprise, this feat will be around city block level. And at a high end, assuming that he pulverized the space due to the wording of the statement, the force would be equivalent to roughly 1.5 kilotons of TNT, which is small town level. For town level consistency now, Spider-Man was able to beat Electro once again, and he did it while having multiple broken bones. This is important because Electro can store 1 million volts. When calculated, this would put Electro's attacks much deeper into the kilotons, getting him and Spidey by extension all the way up to large town level. But now let's move on to feats from the second game. And for metas for base Spider-Man, we're gonna have to do a deep dive into the pair of Spider-Man's performance against Sandman. Peter's iron spider arms are able to endure Miles' energy siphoned into them and shoot them out in order to defeat Sandman. Miles' attacks during the scene are also shown to crystallize sections of Sandman, and when calculated, this would get to around multi-city blocks, so that's consistent right there. But if we're gonna talk about Miles' scaling, he has one very impressive feat from his own game. But I'm a little hesitant to scale it to base Peter Parker, so let's just move on to the Black Suit, because Black Suit just has better blatant scaling to Miles than base Peter does, to be honest. But anyways, Miles' most impressive feat comes from the climax of his own game, where he was able to absorb and nullify a surge of energy that would have gone on to vaporize the entirety of Harlem. The output of such a blast has been determined to be equivalent to around 484.5 kilotons at a low end, and at a high end it would be around 410 gigatons. So at a low end, this blast would be over 100 times stronger than something like Hiroshima, and at a high end, this blast could potentially pulverize Mount Everest 4 times over. And as established, Black Suit Peter Parker scales to this level of power. Peter also has the anti-venom suit, which isn't really a power boost per se. It's more or less the same power as the symbiote, but it comes with none of like the downsides or weaknesses, such as those sound weakness, and it doesn't change Peter's overall demeanor. And by the end of the game, this is something Peter has on deck, so low-key, Black Suit scaling probably scales to him currently in base. But moving on to speed now, and to get straight to the point, he'll be anywhere from massively hypersonic to baseline faster than speed of light, like Batman, as he can casually dodge Electro's electricity, which at bare minimum would be around massively hypersonic. But you have to remember, during this point in the game, he's working with Otto Octavius, who helped to make his lightning closer to pure electricity, meaning the speed of this attack would be closer to around 9% the speed of light. This range of speed you could try to argue is consistent, as if you look into the first game's DLC, Spider-Man has to hold down Hammerhead so he can get hit by a laser-based attack. The implication being that Hammerhead could probably dodge it if he wasn't being held down. And Spider-Man should scale to Hammerhead, so yeah, he'd be around relativistic plus to possibly faster than the speed of light. Overall though, Spider-Man's speed is pretty contentious due to his Spidey sense. A lot of people like to argue that all of his speed feats just come from the fact that he has precognition via Spider Sense. But I mean, that doesn't really work if you have Spider-Man scaling to potential light timers. So overall, I think Spider-Man's speed scaling is a lot better than how people seem to make it out to be. But anyways, in conclusion, PS4 Spider-Man at bare minimum will be around large building to multi-city block, with a mid-end being around large town level, and a high-end being around island level. And as for speed, he'll be around massive hypersonic, and possibly even faster than speed of light. Not bad for your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. Okay, so who wins? It's a small town level character versus an island level character. So I would have to say that in a bloodlusted head-to-head situation, Peter is a wall that Batman's probably not going to overcome, even using Arkham Batman's highest metas that aren't like Wank-esque. But there's the thing, bloodlusted. Peter really isn't typically bloodlusted, only in the Black Suit does he have that edge to him. Base Peter for the most part prefers the troll and typically holds back, unless it's someone that he knows for sure can endure what he dishes out. Take his fight with Silver Sable for example. He's clearly holding back and talking down to her as well, but despite the very obvious and blatant AP gap, due to Peter's morals, she was able to have a decent prolonged fight with him. I don't gotta tell you that Batman is more skilled than Silver Sable, right? As well as much faster. I'd even argue that Batman is faster than a peak Peter Parker via the scaling we got from this new Justice League game. With this being said though, if Peter were to web up Batman, that's an instant win con, as Peter's webs have been shown to restrain people much stronger than Batman. But Batman's just so fast that it would never ever touch him. You gotta remember, both of these guys are superheroes, so realistically in character, I see Peter Parker not really sweating him that much, allowing Batman by extension to somehow exploit something to get a win con. And you gotta remember, if you're just much stronger than Batman, he will not fight you at all. This is shown through Mr. Freeze, whereas instead of fighting him head on, he used the environment to slowly get the better of him. And unlike Peter, Mr. Freeze was actually trying to kill Batman. So if Peter would have somehow let Batman get out of his sight, it more than likely wouldn't end well for Spider-Man over here, as he's already much faster, so that Spidey sense is not going to do anything for him. And you guys have to also remember, current Batman doesn't really fight you anymore. Instead, he almost exclusively uses his fear gas. And even in Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, he's no stranger to just using it. Keep in mind, he wasn't even bloodless in this situation, as in Kill the Justice League, he was told by Brainiac not to kill the Suicide Squad, and the four of them could overcome it because they were in an environment where they could reverse engineer it. You guys have to remember, fear gas is no joke. Even weaker variants of it, as seen as Arkham Asylum, are stated to be able to drive 10 men insane. True, Spider-Man was able to keep his cool and composure with something like Scorpion's toxin, but he was not immune to its hallucinogenic effects. Since Scorpion's toxin has no real way to quantify it, you can't assert that it's just more potent than Batman stuff, as literally garbage variants of the stuff that Batman uses can drive 10 men insane with a couple syringe shots. And yes, Batman is immune to his own fear toxin via his sheer mental will, but you can't really say that Spider-Man just has stronger mental will. If this was the comic variant of Spider-Man, then we would have a conversation. But trying to say that Insomniac Spider-Man's will is as strong as Arkham Batman, the same guy who took out an entire army alongside his rogues gallery all in one night, 4 times, and even in some instances he was dying throughout the game or had people who knew his secret identity. And yeah, you can see that it's not really a comparable comparison. Peter Parker's a pretty mentally strong guy, but I don't see him collecting all 400 Riddler trophies 4 times in a row in a single night. But forget about all that. Let's make Peter bloodless. Let's give him the black suit. This by far is Peter Parker's best win con, as he doesn't have any of the morals and he's much stronger than his base, or old base I should say. And surprisingly, base Batman has stuff to deal with something like the symbiote. Let's say Batman in character tries to run away or create some spacing for Peter after he sees that he's so much stronger than he is. And let's hypothetically say that he just uses a batarang. But it's not just an ordinary batarang, it's a sonic batarang, which are so loud that they can cause excruciating pain to the average person and even destroy the glass of buildings even when deployed to the bottom of the floor. The entire point of the sonic batarangs is for Batman to create space or distractions. So all I'm basically saying is Batman has a way on deck to get rid of the symbiote. No prep needed, but if you give him prep, it's just gonna be even worse, as now he has fear toxin and sonic batarangs. Like I said earlier, post Arkham Knight Batman only uses the fear gas. He doesn't really pull up on people anymore. So if any version of Insomniac Spider-Man were to pull up on Arkham Batman, this is the Batman he'll be fighting. But let me stop being a Batman tart for 1 minute. Let me give you guys what you want to hear. Yes, if you put Spider-Man and Batman in a ring, remove all of the morals, all of the character actions, and make them fight like a kid smashing 2 toys together, Spider-Man would win negative to low difficulty. But I hope that despite the blatant attack potency gap, I've shown that Batman has multiple ways of taking out Spider-Man. So in conclusion, this is what I gotta say. In a random in-character encounter, Batman would more than likely win due to speed blitzing and having hacks that can make Peter Parker hallucinate or even go insane. But if you give Batman prep, everything I said is still pretty much applicable, but Spider-Man would just lose even harder. But if you make it a bloodlusted fight where it's just straight hands, Spider-Man's gonna one-shot him. Let's be serious. Think about the Arkham games for a second, if you will. If there's one thing that the series taught us, it's that despite whatever you throw in front of Batman, he has the ingenuity, skill, arsenal, and most importantly, the willpower to put down any challenge in front of him. Which is why I think this matchup is closer than you think.
What's wrong? Scared.
And just like that, if you made it to the end of this video, I'd like to thank you. And I want to thank a couple other guys because I didn't do this alone. As I want to thank Wayne Borg and Xeno5G on Instagram for helping me out. I've known these guys for a minute since the Instagram days, and they enlightened me on the Arkham metas and stuff like that, in short. And they've always consistently helped me even back in 2023 when I used to post exclusively on Instagram. So shout out to them, their stuff will be in the description. And I'd also like to thank Crisis. You might know him, he's one of the biggest power skillers on the entire platform, but he enlightened me on the logic that Batman could just simply speed blitz and fear toxin freaking Spider-Man. And he told me that I could use his logic if I told everyone that he has his own version of this video coming out in the near future. He also plans to do a lot more Arkham Inverse due to the release of this game right here. So if you're interested in Arkham scaling, Metal Gear scaling, Star Wars scaling, this is the channel you have to subscribe to. But as for me, I want to thank you guys for watching. I'll see you guys next week, but until then, stay big, G fans.